Okay, I am back. I believe we might have missed clicking a button here to add the audio, so we might need to start over again. Let me, can somebody speak while I check the audio on the
Yes.
YouTube?
Can you hear me, Yasmin?
And the plan to start over would be the best way to go about it.
Not
Yes,
a problem.
I confirm the audio is working.
The audio is working. Okay. Hello to our commissioners, everybody who's joined the call, the public. Yet another challenge in the age of COVID with technology. The audio was not working on the YouTube link. And so we are going to now just begin our public meeting. The agenda for the meeting is as follows. Agenda item 1, call to order and roll call. 1A, call for quorum. It is 9:10 a.m. on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. I call this meeting of the Independent Redistricting Commission to order. For the record, the administrative assistant will be taking roll. When your name is called, please indicate you're present. If you're unable to respond verbally, we ask that you please type your name. Yasmin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Watchman,
Present.
Commissioner Lerner,
Present.
Commissioner York,
Present.
Commissioner Meal,
Present.
Chairwoman Newberg.
Present.
And then also for the record, we have legal counsel Pamela Pizer, Caroline Guerrero, Jessica Klein, and Kyle Cummings from the Attorney General's office. And we also have Angela Miller transcribing, Rick Hughes, and Nicole Sorensen from the Department of Administration. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Please note for the minutes, a quorum is present. Item 1B, call for notice. Yasmin, was the notice and agenda for the commission meeting properly posted 48 hours in advance of today's meeting?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to item 2, approval of minutes from March 16th, 2021. 2A, we will first address the general session minutes of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. As a reminder, video recording fulfills statutory requirements, provided that those video recordings are working appropriately. Is there any discussion regarding the public session meetings of last week? Do I have a motion to approve the public general session minutes of last week?
This is Commissioner York. I motion to approve the general session minutes for March 16th at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Watchman, seconds.
Thank you. Any further discussion? With that, we'll do a vote. Vice Chair Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye. And with that, the general session minutes 9 a.m., 3 p.m. of March 16th are approved. We'll move to 2B, executive session minutes, 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. As a reminder, video recording fulfills statutory requirements. Is there any discussion regarding the executive committee session meeting minutes from last week? Do I have a motion to approve the executive session minutes 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. for March 16th?
Commissioner Meal, I still move.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner York, second.
Any further discussion? We'll do a vote. Vice Chair Watchman.
Madam Chair, I think I need to abstain from the first executive session, but I vote for this aye for the second, if I'm understanding the feedback from staff. I wasn't a part, I didn't participate in the first executive session.
Okay, I am gonna make then, I would like to change the motion if we can, table those motions. I don't know if I need to formally withdraw them. Let's break them down into, legal counsel, is it okay if Vice Chair Watchman just abstains from one, but we can keep it all in one motion?
That would be fine as long as it's clear as to what he is voting on.
Okay, excellent. So we will keep the same motion. Vice Chairman Watchman, you are abstaining from,
The
well, then
nine,
how does he abstain from only half of the motion? You could abstain from both.
I can abstain from both. That's fine. That's
Okay.
acceptable.
With that, Commissioner Mule.
Aye.
With that, Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, 4 in support, 1 abstaining. And just again, I'd like to reiterate to the public, if you did not hear this the first time around, moving forward, it is our intention to do written minutes to make it a little more accessible and user-friendly for the public to review what is discussed in open meeting on our website. We will do that as soon as we have the staff and the proper bandwidth to do that. With that, we'll move forward to agenda item 3, opportunity comments. Public comment will open for a minimum of 30 minutes and remain open until the adjournment of the meeting. Comments will only be accepted electronically in writing on the link provided in the notice and agenda for this public meeting, and will be limited to 3,000 characters. Please note, members of the commission may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01, and as a result of public comment, will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, respond to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. With that, we'll move to agenda item 4, discussion on public comments received prior to today's meeting. I'll give a few remarks and then I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners. The public obviously noticed that there was a 4-hour cutoff of the YouTube link. I just want to take ownership of that. That is my bad. That is something I was aware of and completely lost sight of. Moving forward, not only will that not be a mistake, but when we're staffed, we will be able to clean up, I think, a lot of these errors. There was a new complaint that somebody said they were filing, questioning whether the commissioners violated open meeting law by keeping the information, references, and contacts during the executive director hiring process confidential, even though we each kept those conversations to ourselves and did not share any information outside of the public eye. We have not received yet that complaint, and so that remains to be determined down the road. Some of the public comments, still confusion about why and when we go into executive session. I will do a better job each and every time of not only reciting the legal jargon, but trying to explain a little bit more clearly, just in layman's terms, why the material we're discussing needs to be done or ought to be done in executive session. I would encourage everybody to think about it through the lens of, number one, desiring to minimize litigation, because most of the executive session conversations are having attorney-client conversations, getting legal advice. There is not a lot of precedent legally to everything that we are doing in public. And so to err on the side of caution to get clear legal advice will help all of us avoid additional litigation. And there's also sensitivities to the limits of what we can discuss as is outlined by the agenda. So I'd like to just let the public know that if there are lengthy executive session meetings, no business is being done. There are no, for better or worse, attorneys on this commission. We are trying to understand the nuances of laws that have not well been defined. And so that's a response to one of the questions. And there was a public comment about getting vaccinated and getting out there. It sounds like the commission is well on our way to getting out there. With that, please, my fellow commissioners, observations, responses, comments to the public comments we've received to date.
Chairwoman Newberg, the only thing I will say is that we appreciate that the public is watching and providing us with feedback. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on executive director and other potential administrative support positions and duties of all IRC staff positions. I would like to report that Brian Schmidt has accepted our offer to serve as executive director. Initially, he was planning to begin April 1st. There's some complexities with the city of Phoenix and their holiday schedule. So in order to clean up some paperwork with the transition, it would help, I think, everybody involved for his start date to be April 5th. I had one comment with him to extend the offer. I would like to share that he and I both share a similar commitment to hiring a diverse staff, both politically and ethnically, as best as possible, to lead to the best representation we can of the state and to also achieve the best decision-making that we can. Along those lines, we collectively as commissioners will need to decide what level of authority we want to delegate to Brian in terms of his hiring. We do not need to decide that now, nor do I actually think that it's a good use of our time. He won't be starting yet now for a week or two. But I ask that you begin to think about it so that when we do reconvene and eventually discuss any boundaries or parameters we want to set on Brian, balancing out the need for him to have, an ability to manage a staff, but also ensuring from our perspective checks and balances, this will be a conversation we're going to return to. And then one other item on that, I would like to let you know, and the public know, we have all executive assistant applications in hand. In the meantime, before Brian starts, I think it would be very helpful for us to move forward with posting the deputy director and public information officer positions. The reason being, it allows for a wide net that goes well beyond just Brian. We can tap into, everybody that's interested in applying to these positions. It would allow Brian to have candidates on the sooner side when he steps in. It's something that would be helpful to him, and I know he would feel positively about. And so I think that would be our next step in terms of our hiring. Thoughts, reactions, questions?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Watchman. On the topic of a deputy, I forget, and excuse my memory, but what are the duties of a deputy? Just, thinking out loud, it seems to me that maybe we could have another function for this person. I don't know if we need a second in command. I think we need someone maybe who can support, maybe a technician or data person that could be on the team to support and help us with the number crunching and the mapping. Yes, we're going to have consultants, but at this point, I question the need for a deputy in lieu of another important position in the commission. So I just want to throw that out for some discussion.
I think in sense of priorities, and again, I don't want to speak for Brian. He's not employed yet.
Well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I guess my question is, I don't think we need a deputy. I think we need another technician on the team. And so, it's such a small office. Usually deputies traditionally, help run the operation, but it's a small office. And so I think our money could be better spent, if you will, in the people's money on a different position. And the focus is going to be, once we get to it, is mapping and understanding. So I don't think we need it, but I'll stop there for a minute.
Okay, no, thank you. I understand what you're getting at now, much better. Just for point of reference, in the past, there have been positions on the commission for a deputy executive director, a public information officer who is responsible for really getting out in the community, connecting with all of the different demographics and helping us establish meetings and communication. We've typically hired an IT person to help us with, things like YouTube links and other type of technological problems. I know that in terms of a budget, of all the things we're spending, this isn't a significant expense, but it's an absolute legitimate question of what we need. And there's also a question of can we post something without committing to even hiring. My goal in this conversation is empowering our current executive director, soon to be empowering him to get started as quickly as possible. That's my motivation in this conversation.
This is Commissioner Meal. I think Commissioner Watchman makes a very good point, and I would phrase it that we don't need another general administrator. So whether we call a position a deputy or not, I think that both we as commissioners and our new executive director should really think about the skills that are most important to add to the team. And just a general administrator is probably not what we need the most. Thank you, Derek.
Well, and so this is Commissioner York. I'd like to add that from our interview process with the executive director position, one of the things that was evident is some sort of public relations, social media expert was going to be in need or desired for the Arizona population to be able to see online and react to our decisions in a way that we presented ourselves. So that to me is an area of expertise that maybe Brian might need some help in. I'm not 100% sure, but that's where I would be trying to cull some applications.
This is Commissioner Lerner, and I'll agree that I think the PIO is probably really important because that's to go with what Commissioner York was saying. And as for the deputy, I think I'd really want to look and see what those responsibilities are before we move forward on that. But I would I'm supportive of moving forward with advertising a PIO position because that media person is real important for us to get going.
And an IT person.
Yes.
Okay, so the consensus that I'm hearing is there's no urgency to post a deputy director position, but there is consensus to post a public information officer position, so that we can begin to, network more with the various communities. And Yasmin, I'm presuming that there are, past examples of scope of works and things that ADOA can rely on as a job description. I know that being bilingual is very important for this position, something that actually Brian mentioned. So maybe we could take a look at that offline, but get this moving.
Yes, I believe I previously sent some information on a public information officer and other positions, but I can go ahead and resend those.
Okay.
So,
Counsel, do we need a motion to formally move forward with posting then a PIO position? Yes?
Yes, that is the best way to ensure that our requirements are met.
Okay, thank you. Can I entertain a motion to approve moving forward with posting a public information officer position?
This is Commissioner Lerner. I'll so move.
Do I have a second?
I have a discussion question. Do we want to, in the previous times when we've posted positions, we've had a closing date of that position?
Yes.
Do we want to add that to the motion? And I would suggest
Yes.
either April 9th or April 16th, sorry.
Can you just quickly remind me what day of the week April 9th is?
9th is a Friday, as is the 16th, following week.
I have a slight preference to avoid the Friday closing dates. It makes it very difficult for us to get that material in advance of Tuesday's meeting or anybody else. If we have a Thursday closing date, it allows more time to receive the information and disseminate it.
Then I would suggest the April 8th date and for us to get moving on this.
Okay, so
This is Commissioner Lerner. I just would, I would wonder when it would get posted. I'd like to make sure we get it's out there for at least 2 weeks. So could we say that it's 2 weeks from the date of posting with that Thursday date, idea, but
I think the 15th would probably be better.
15th. I'd be okay with that, just as long as we have a good 2 weeks, solid 2 weeks.
That's fine.
okay, so April 15th? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, so we will need a new motion with the posting of the public information officer position with a closing date of April 15th.
Chairwoman Newberg, I'll amend my motion to include the closing date of April 15th.
Do I have a second?
Seconds.
Any further discussion? Okay, quick vote. Vice Chair Watchman?
Aye. Excuse me. Aye.
Commissioner Meal?
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner?
Aye.
Commissioner York?
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we will move forward with posting the PIO position with a closing date of April 15th. We will now move to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on data census delay and ways to mitigate its disruption. Many of you may have already heard, the media has done an excellent job of reporting. The commission did receive a letter from the Census Bureau that they are looking at ways to deliver the information as early as possible. They are now planning to deliver information in an outdated or older version to states as early as August. It's incumbent upon the states to ensure that they have the expertise to take advantage of that data in that format. But given that we are going to be moving forward with our own hire of a mapping consultant, I think this is great news that we'll have something to work with a little earlier than expected. I do not have any other additional information on that to share unless there are other comments or observations from the commission. Okay, with that, we will move to.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, if we could, my apologies. So I did see the letter, and I was questioning what it meant by outdated version, and I don't know if it impacts the quality of the data. You know, the data is the data. Is it going to be manipulated different? Are they moving to a new presentation? I was unclear as to what data actually could be coming to the state of Arizona in August. You know, is there any way to kind of elaborate more on what the difference is?
So thank you for that question. My understanding is yes, the data is the data, and it is reliable and it is usable. The question is whether or not the state and or the mapping consultant we hire has the sophistication or the expertise to use the data in that format. I'm presuming that people that are trained today may not have that ability, but you know, it's a skill that I'm guessing.
Well, Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair Watchman. Haven't heard that. You know, I don't know. You know, I guess we move forward once we get the mapping consultant to start using the data. I don't know if there is any way to mitigate other than to move forward with the mapping consultant and our staff. And once the data arrives at our desk, we move forward. And so I don't see anything beyond that.
Yeah. Okay. It'll be nice to have data. Thank you. If no further discussion, we'll move on to agenda item 7, discussion and possible action on options for securing legal counsel. As we have discussed, there are 3 primary options. Option A, continue with the Attorney General's office representation. Option B, or what we also call option 2, hire legal counsel that is already procured from the Attorney General's outside counsel list. Or option 3 or C, which is to continue with the RFP procurement process. I'd like to update you that, and I'd like to really thank the Department of Administration, their counsel, and the Attorney General's office, their counsel. We had a very productive meeting yesterday. We're all on the same page and very comfortable with how these various processes would move forward with both option 2 or B and option 3. For a point of clarification, and this is very important for us to understand as we think through how we want to move forward. If we were to choose to do option 3, which is to move forward with the formal RFP process, and we would be trained in terms of how to go about that, that would allow us to be able to see all proposals that have come in. If we look at that list and determine that there's no added benefit, meaning that we are comfortable with all state procured firms that are already listed in option 2, we could at that moment decide, thank you so much for all of these great proposals, but we are going to choose option 2 and move forward with our own hiring practice, provided that we stick with those procured firms. It's important to understand that the methodology is different, and we're going to be we have Scott Hughes to train us. I think it's Scott, but anyway, option 3 with the RFP process, that is done in executive session. The firms are entitled to confidentiality, and we rank and evaluate criteria in executive session. We are entitled to ask them to come in for oral presentations. All of that is done in executive session. In option 2, if we go with those firms that are already procured, all of that is done in public session. We can ask the firms to come and give oral presentation, but there is no justification for us to go into executive session to evaluate any of it. It's different than hiring personnel like an executive director. So I wanted to make clear those distinctions because it gives us a fair amount of flexibility and control. With that, I'm going to announce to everybody that the commission may vote to go into executive session in this conversation, which will not be open to the public, for the purpose of discussion or consideration of records exempt by law from public inspection, including the receipt and discussion of information or testimony that is specifically required to be maintained as confidential by state or federal law, ARS 38-431.03A2, as well as for the purpose of obtaining legal advice related to RFPs, requests for proposals, ARS 38-433. If we choose to go into executive session on this agenda item, we will try to explain to the public in plain English why. It will be either for legal advice or for keeping the proposals and ranking information confidential as is required of us. Before we make that decision or move forward, I'd like to turn over to Rick Hughes I'm sorry, I said your name incorrectly before, to discuss the process in more depth. I think that this will be helpful regardless of what path we take, because all of this will be relevant when we move to discuss the mapping consultant. And with that, I will move over to Rick.
Chairwoman Newberg, if I could just make a quick interjection just to clarify.
Please.
When you talked about going into executive session under option 3, it's not because the law firms get confidentiality, but it's the procurement process that happens to be
Okay.
about the law firms.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the members of the board. I'm Rick Hughes. I'm with the Department of Administration. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to come before the organization here and give you an update on the solicitation process for legal counsel services. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my volume just slightly to turn it up a bit, just in case. So the solicitation for the Independent Redistricting Commission Legal Counsel Services closed on March 19th. There were 9 proposals received. And, we can get into more details about that in executive session. Before we get into, opening up the proposals and that sort of thing, we do have an evaluation criteria scoring tool that needs to be finalized. And I would suggest that also should be done in executive session. Do you have any other questions for me this morning?
Rick, could you please explain why the scoring tool needs to be done in executive session, just to clarify that for everybody?
Sure. There's probably this is the first time you guys have been through something like this. We typically meet with an evaluation committee and in advance of the solicitations being, or the proposals being delivered, or typically we do this in advance of the solicitation closing, just because we want to be prepared when the proposals come in to meet with the evaluation committee. But you know, there are in this case, there are firms that, you know, are already contracted with the state. There may be proposals from other firms. In the when we make our decisions about the scoring tool, we may have some discussion about the questions that were asked in the solicitation. Those could trigger comments and positions by the board that probably are to the state's advantage to keep those confidential, because these firms may later be called in for some negotiations and that sort of thing as the selection process narrows to a smaller group. So that's my recommendation, that the state is best served to do that scoring tool in private. It's typically done in private with any other solicitation. The public process, obviously at the time of contract award, everything's available for those people who participated, those firms that participated in the process, to examine the documentation. This is all very well documented, and will stand up to any sort of public scrutiny that might be there.
Can I ask a question about process?
Sure.
Since we have a group of firms that are already on the state's list, were they required to also, if they were interested in this particular RFP, were they required to also submit as part of that? Or I guess that's my question.
Well, okay, so this is a solicitation that is a little more narrowly crafted for the IRC based on what had been done previously. We also borrowed some of the concepts from the Attorney General solicitation. So it is, if we decided to select a firm that proposed, yeah, you would have to respond. Now, I can tell you not all of the firms that are on the Attorney General's list offered a proposal. That's probably fairly obvious from the numbers that I reported, but if they wanted to be sure that they could earn a contract with the IRC based on this solicitation, they obviously had to respond. But if the commission elects one of the other options described by Madam Chair Newberg, I'm sorry, did I get your name right?
You're allowed to butcher my name as much as you want, but you got it right anyway.
Actually, I'm going to talk to my mother about changing my name to Scott. I like it better. So, if those options do allow the commission to make a selection from the Attorney General's list, because that list was solicited for sort of a wider breadth of legal services, but it did have a specialty area of elections law and the area of interest that the IRC has. So that's why those options are all viable.
This is Commissioner Meal. I have a question. Mr. Hughes, if we do go through the procurement process, does the state then have control over things that happen in the future, like changing attorneys on us? Any change that would occur that we would want as a commission? Are we then constrained? Is the contract with the state as opposed to directly with the commission? I've heard, and I'm not knowledgeable in this area, but I've heard there are constraints we impose on ourselves if we go through that procurement process that might bite us later.
I don't know of any constraints. I mean, if you were to make a selection from this RFP solicitation, I think when people talk the timeline that's involved and the potential for the one of the competing proposers to protest the award. I mean, that's actually, in my view, that's sort of the beauty of public procurement, is that the people who participate, who compete for the state's business, has an opportunity to challenge the decision, and the state has the burden of sort of showing that its award decision was justifiable. Now, keep this in mind. You're not required to award a single contract from this solicitation. We have flexibility to award multiple contracts, and then once the contracts are awarded, there's no guarantee that it actually produces business for the firms. I mean, some of this selection process might include, just having firms, depending on their expertise and specialty that you'll learn more about in the process, you may want to have them available to you if need be. And that's, I think, understood by the folks that, that saw the solicitation and offered a proposal.
This is Commissioner Lerner. I have a question, Mr. Hughes. Did we received something from Director Tobin about our status for procurement, didn't we, Chairwoman Newberg? Does that,
yes.
How does that factor into this?
Do you want me to respond, or Rick, do you want to respond to that? I don't know, Rick, if you're aware of what Commissioner Lerner is getting at.
I think there was a document that just sort of laid out, initially, I think it laid out those law firms that were selected by the AG's office, I believe, as well as just sort of, what your options are, whether you use those or you do a solicitation. I think we talked a little bit about the solicitation that had been done in 2011, and the firms that proposed in that. So we gave a little background. So that document was, I hope, informative and useful for you.
It was incredibly informative and useful. Thank you. I don't believe that's what Commissioner Lerner's referring to. Director Tobin sent a letter just letting the commissioners know that he is giving us broad authority to conduct our procurement, which is wonderful. Having said that, just because we have the authority to do something doesn't mean that we don't have the obligation to follow state guidelines and code. And so to the extent that, we have this great alignment with the AG's office and ADOA with a path forward that I think everybody's comfortable with, I think we're safe where we can exercise a fair amount of control, but also be ensured that basic state statutes are being met to reduce the likelihood of litigation.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I misunderstood the question, but I think that the commission's made up of people with a lot of professional expertise and experience. The procurement process is one that it's not as complicated as some people want to make it. I mean, this is fairly straightforward in terms of we're procuring legal services. I think when we get into the tool sort of makes it helpful in evaluating the proposals. Certainly, if there were some questions or inquiry that you had about the process, DOA could be a resource for you on that. I would think that we typically most of our work is done in the drafting of the solicitation the kickoff with the evaluation committee, and depending on the complexity of procurement, you know, we have follow through and that sort of thing, drafting those documents. But I believe that a body of this makeup would probably not have much of a struggle in going through the process.
This is Commissioner Meal. Of the 9 applicants, how many are already on the government list? And I was disappointed that we didn't get the applications yet. So where are we on that?
Okay, so so your second question about not getting the proposals yet, it's because our process is to finalize this evaluation tool, because we don't want to reveal the proposals to folks, because then it might be suggested that we looked at proposals and then we did the evaluation tool. So we want to get the evaluation tool completed first. But to your first question, of the 9 proposals, 7 of those proposals are from firms that are on the Attorney General's list.
So in other words, Rick, in order for us to be able to personally review which firms submitted a proposal, we need to first convene an executive session and decide on our ranking so that we can ensure there's no bias.
Right. So that's right. The ranking tool, if you will, we would finalize in executive session.
And is that something we can do today?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, we have put this in the agenda. The next item in the agenda, item 8, is discussion and possible action on evaluating the outside counsel and the RFP procurement. So we have alerted the public that of the possibility we would go into executive session to do exactly this, to begin a conversation about the ranking. Before we do that, I just want to, we would need to, the 5 of us, decide that we're going to begin to embark on that third option, understanding that at any point we have the prerogative to say thanks and we're going to revert back to option 2. So at this point, that is our next decision, unless, of course, there's more room for questions. It's important for everybody to understand, the methodology and the options available to us. But that's our next decision point. Do we want to move to, move through the RFP process and begin the next step of ranking in executive session?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Watchman. Before we go there, maybe Rick or Mr. Hughes can help us, at least help me decipher the intent of the March 8th letter from Director Tobin, basically granting the commission procurement authority.
Vice Chair Watchman, I don't believe Rick is aware of that letter. So unless I'm mistaken, there may be a better representative on this call who might be able to better share that feedback.
Well, let me finish my question first, Madam
Okay,
Chair,
sorry.
if I could. Yeah, thank you. We did receive a letter from Andy Tobin, the director, and basically granted the commission procurement authority. And so I'm not sure what that means, because my colleague, Commissioner Mill, and I had the same thought, why are we not getting, all of the applications to at least peruse, since we're given the procurement authority? And so there's some block behind it. So I'm trying to understand what it means, to have procurement authority, and then you, Mr. Hughes, are still intervening and basically, I'll say, blocking our access to the information. So I'm trying to understand the letter, just so I can get a better feel for what we're going to be dealing with. So that's my question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Well, I think a similar letter was provided to the commission previously in the last in 2011. I think, you know, maybe the timing, first of all, I don't want to be considered, and I understand the statement. I'm not trying to block anything. I'm just trying to help the agency do its procurement steps, if you will, so that it's appropriate and less subject to challenge by the competitors who submitted proposals. That's my purpose for being here. And we tried to do this evaluation tool previously, but there was a little bit misunderstanding, I think, and the discussion went in some other directions, and so that didn't get accomplished. And it's possible that the letter was done thinking that had already been accomplished. I'm not sure. So there is, you know, sort of maybe a slight timing difference here.
Excuse me,
No,
Mr.
you know,
Hughes, I
I'm
think
sorry,
Ms.
Pam.
Hanson-
Pam, I'm sorry, Nicole had her hand raised for a while, and
That's
since
what
we
I was
have
gonna say.
we have counsel from ADOA right here who could answer the question. Please, Nicole.
Hi, thanks everyone. And I hope I can answer the question. And Rick, if I misspeak, please feel free to correct me. So as to the first point on the letter, I would encourage the commission, to seek legal guidance from the AG's office on interpreting the scope of that letter. We want to be careful not to be appearing to provide the IRC with any kind of legal advice. But basically the point of that letter is to just clarify, you know, ADOA doesn't necessarily take the position that the commission on its own would need it, the authority. But in the event that it did, we'll go ahead and delegate that just in the abundance of clarity that, sorry, that's my daughter spelling right now. In the abundance of clarity, to make the commission clear that you do have the authority to through this process on your own. And I think, Chair Newberg, you said it correctly, that it doesn't mean that you don't need to follow the law, of course, just that you can do it without ADOA. However, ADOA is certainly here as a resource for you, as an administrative resource, and my understanding is that the commission is interested in that resource. And so that is our role here today, and why we're trying to make sure that we enable you to go through this procurement process in the safest way. And this is where I do want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. So Rick, please clarify if I am. The actual content of the proposals, I believe, is confidential by statute until an award is provided. And by award, basically you declare a winner. And so by withholding them, we're not withholding them from the commission necessarily. We're waiting until we can do so in the proper form, which would be an executive session, so that we're not violating that confidentiality by distributing it in a manner that would be open to the public. Does that clarify the question?
Madam Chair, I suppose, I guess I still don't understand what it means to be granted procurement authority.
Okay.
And then, you know, we got to keep the information confidential. But, you know, we haven't seen, so I'm still a little bit vague on what the authority means. You know, I guess you have to bifurcate the authority. You still have to follow the process, which Mr. Hughes and others are following, and you still have to follow the confidentiality rules. But we're part of the same team. You know, we represent the state, and so, you know, I guess confidential would mean releasing the information to the public. I'm not public anymore. I'm a member of the commission, so it seems to me that you know, maybe I'm belaboring this point, but it seems to me, given that we all been granted procurement authority, that, you know, we can take just like Mr. Hughes and others have been able to see the applicants, we should as well. But, you know, I don't understand, but I'll stop there just because it's still vague to me. I'll just leave it at bay right now. And maybe we can proceed with discussion. I know you're trying to move toward executive session, but I'm not quite sure where we stand in this whole process. So thank you.
I understand, Commissioner Watchman, that this is confusing. It's confusing enough that it required counsel of ADOA and the AG's office and myself to all come together to try to understand the law. I'd like to again make a distinction. Just because we have the authority to procure doesn't mean that we're absolved of the responsibility to meet state statute and guidelines. The five of us do not have that expertise to do it in a way where we would not subject ourselves to potential litigation. The safest, most effective way is to rely on the state procurement office, which does this all the time, in cooperation with us, so that we can all collectively feel that the process will, be done according to law and ethics. And so I understand, it's not simple, it's not easy, but I don't see much of a downside to at least begin the process of RFP. It's confidential. We go into executive session, we would rank, we could learn the firms. And then if we choose at that point that there's no added benefit to going through this process with the state, we could take ownership back with the firms that have already been procured, because those firms in option 2 that have already been procured, we've already done our due diligence as a commission to the state that they're properly vetted. It's a safe way to go legally.
So this is Commissioner Meal. Is it time for us to then choose? Should making a motion to go with option 3 and going into executive session, is that appropriate now, Chairwoman?
If there is consensus, if there is no further questions, and we're collectively feeling good that this process provides us the best path to make the best decision.
Then I move that we choose option 3, recognizing that we could change our mind later, and that we move into executive session to discuss the details of how we would rank the firms.
This is Commissioner Lerner. I will second that motion.
Any further discussion?
This is Commissioner York. Just I'd amend that option 3 is item C on the agenda of number 7.
Correct. With that, we'll do a vote. Vice Chair Watchman. A vote to move into executive session for the purpose of moving forward with the RFP process. Vice Chair Watchman.
Commissioner Watchman votes aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye. With that, we are going to move into executive session for the public. This is in order for us to be able to move through the ranking in the confidential manner that is required of us. Please hang up this line, and we will need to move to the executive session link. Pam, anything else you want to say before we make this jump?
Just that the members of the RFP team, which at this point is Mr. Hughes, as well as Ms. Sorensen, will be joining us in executive session, as they will be providing information related to his confidential documents.
Yes, and Nicole Sorensen will be joining us as a technical expert in procurement. So thank you very much. Okay.
shopping at Walmart?
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We'll just give a minute for everybody to reconvene. I see that we have all 5 commissioners with us. We have our transcription expert here. Thank you, Angela, Yasmin, Rick, Nicole, Kyle, Jessica Klein, Pam. Okay, with that, I believe that we can get started again. Thank you to the public for your patience. We had a productive executive session meeting in which we went through the ranking exercise that was required to be done in confidentiality. And we were able to ask whatever kinds of legal questions we had in order to fully understand the processes with which we can move forward. With that, I believe we can begin to move forward with an action item. I'd like to turn it over to my commissioners and see if we have a motion based on those initial ranking conversations.
This is Commissioner Lerner. I move that we approve the suggested rankings based on our discussion and as recorded by Rick Hughes.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner York. I second.
Any further discussion? With that, we'll take a vote. Vice Chair Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York, Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we will move forward with the suggested rankings in executive session and pick up the RFP process next week. With that, unless there's any other further discussion, we will move to item number 9, which is discussion and possible action on mapping consultant support. That RFP process will close on March 26th. I personally have nothing to add on this agenda item. Unless there are other questions or comments, we can move on. With that, we'll move to item number 10, discussion and possible action on budget. I'd like to inform the commissioners and the public that I did speak briefly last week with Deborah Gann. She's a representative with the General Accounting Office with ADOA regarding an interstate agency agreement. ADOA can aid the commission with budgeting and accounting related matters. It's just setting the stage to be able to facilitate budgeting in an expeditious manner. In terms of next steps, our executive director, Brian, will need to follow up with her. And it is recommended that she come and present to the commission sometime, I'd say, within the next maybe, month or so to talk more fully about the services that ADOA provides as it relates to accounting and budgeting. But for now, it's an important arrangement that is helping us pay our bills. I have no other items on the
Madam Chair?
issue. Yes, please.
I'm still, well, can someone explain to me where we stand with the Arizona annual budget? I know we talked about the last time, and we did have some numbers presented to us, but is that going through the process? I forget what the state is regarding their annual budget, which starts on July 1. And so do we have a say in that? Because it looks like it was already put together. So I'm assuming that it's included in the governor's budget that maybe is being deliberated right now. I don't know where we are on that process. And I don't know, maybe we need to get our new director to look at it as well to see if it's adequate and sufficient. But, and maybe we can discuss that next week and have someone available to speak to us on where we stand with that. So a question from my part. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your question. Yes, so just to confirm, we have been allocated $500,000 in order to take us through June 30th. In terms of the next fiscal year, we have already been allocated, it's been appropriated by the state legislature, $3 million. We are well covered to be able to get us off the ground and fulfill our responsibility in the near future. Once we have our full staff in place, we'll be able to flesh out a more comprehensive budget where we can itemize things a little bit more deliberatively. And then we will work with Deborah Gann with ADOA. Again, we need to keep in mind a fiscal responsibility to honor a budget and what's been allocated. We have a mission that we are responsible to fulfill. And if and when there's a need to go to the state legislature to make a case for additional resources, we have that prerogative. And so that specific budgeting will be fleshed out, I'd say, in the next 4 to 8 weeks. And I don't foresee any immediate concerns as it relates to the budget. The decisions that we've been making to date have all fallen well within line of what's been allocated. Any other questions or comments on that matter?
No.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, a very related item, we'll move on to number 11, which is discussion and possible action on bill paying on our incurred expenses. We do have an expense, item number 11A, Miller Certified Reporting, the invoice dated 3/15/21. I do need a motion to pay that bill.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Watchman. I motion to approve the expense to Miller Certified Reporting dated March 15th, 2021. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that's the motion.
Correct.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, quick vote. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we authorize the payment of the invoice to Miller Certified Reporting of 3/15/21. With that, we'll move on to item number 12, discussion on ADOA resources or any other updates. It can relate to A through E, IT, human resources, procurement, finance, facilities. The only update I have is that I have been approved for a badge. And with that, we can include other people for badges now that we're about to be, hopefully soon a little bit more out there in the public and having a physical location. It's helpful for all of us to get physically approved so that we have that ability to get in and out of the building. With that, any questions? And Yasmin, anything on ADOA's front that you would like to update us on?
No, just wanted to update the public on the address. Last time I promised to give a suite number, and I have one. It is a suite 105. And again, the full address is 1110 West Washington Street, Phoenix, suite 105, Phoenix, Arizona, 85007. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, again, thank you so much, ADOA, for helping us with all of these resources. With that, we'll move on to item number 13, update, discussion, and possible action on Howard Open Meeting Law complaint provided by ADOA Legal Counsel. Given the legal nature of this, the commission may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public for the purpose of obtaining legal advice specifically related to the Howard Open Meeting Law complaint, ARS 38-431.03A3, for discussion or consideration of records exempt by law from public inspection, including the receipt and discussion of information or testimony that is specifically required to be maintained as confidential by state or federal law pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A2, as well as for consultation with attorneys regarding pending or contemplating litigation pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A4. With that, if there is an update that we can share in public meeting, and if there is follow-up attorney-client conversation that needs to happen, we will move to executive session.
Thank you, Chair Newberg. I do have an update because this is ongoing litigation, and I'm going to provide some advice as well as strategy in terms of responding to the complaint that's been filed. My recommendation would be to have the discussion in executive session, which will preserve attorney-client confidentiality.
I move that we go into executive session for this discussion.
And Commissioner Lerner seconds.
Okay, do we need a motion to go into executive session?
A motion to go in, but nothing to come out.
Okay, so we have a first, we have a second. Any further conversation? Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we will move into executive session in order to discuss a open meeting complaint for attorney-client privilege. Please move out of this public session and enter a new link. Okay, for some reason, I don't know if everybody can hear me. My camera is not working. I'm trying to turn it on, but can everybody hear me through audio?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize that my video is not working. I want to make sure that we have everybody in play to resume our public meeting. I believe we have Pam. I believe we have all of our commissioners. So with that, we will move back into our public meeting. Agenda item number 14, discussion of future agenda item requests. Are there any other additional requests that we have not yet brought up during this public meeting? I'm not aware of any new items. I just want to make sure that the language with our discussion of RFPs allows for that next process of further deliberation. I believe that is already on the agenda. Commissioners do have the ability in the next day or two prior to posting the formal agenda to request that additional items be added. If there are no other suggestions, we'll move to item number 15, which is discussion and possible action on scheduling of future meetings. Per our ongoing meeting on Tuesdays at 9 a.m., we are slated to convene next week, the 30th at 9 a.m. and every Tuesday after that. I'm not aware of any other exceptions or special meetings. Is there anything else that the commissioners would like to bring up? With that, we'll move to item number 16, announcements. The next meeting will be next Tuesday, March 30th at 9 a.m. And I do not have any additional announcements. With that, we will move to agenda item number 17, closing of public comments. Please note, members of the commission may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. And with that, we move to item number 18, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Commissioner Meal.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Watchman seconds.
Any discussion? Okay, vote to adjourn. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye. Have a great week.
Commissioner Newberg is an aye, and with that, we adjourn, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.